Good evening and welcome to Books and Brews. I'm so excited because this is the very first show and I have a very, very special person here with me and I'm just full of joy, okay? It's going to be a joyous episode. So I am Tatiana, also known as Basically I Blog Ta here at the Lit House. And this is my guest, Mrs. Marissa Anderson. Hello, Mrs.
Hello,
Anderson.
everyone.
Is it okay if I address you as Mrs. Anderson? Because I'm always going to address you that way.
That's who I am.
Okay, as Mrs. Anderson.
That's fine.
That is who she is. So if you guys don't know, Books and Brews is all about me inviting people who I think are amazing. They've had some type of influence either on me or others in to talk about their favorite books. And if you know books like I know books, if you know books and you get intimate with stories, you know that a person's favorite book says a lot about them and the things that they are passionate about. So Mrs. Anderson and I have a history, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. Then I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about it. So Mrs. Anderson is my 12th grade English AP teacher. She had me as a student at West Charlotte Senior High School back in 2004 and 2005. And she was amazing. At first, I was very scared of her. I was scared to be in her class. I was scared to be challenged, but she introduced me to so many things that I still reference today. And she also introduced me to my favorite book and to my favorite author, Toni Morrison. She had us read Song of Solomon in that class, and she broke it all the way down. That was my first time. Like, I know that book from cover to cover, and I still discover so much more when I open it up to this day. So, Mrs. Anderson, do you remember 2004, 2005? Me in your classroom?
I do.
So what would you like to say about?
Well, first of all, I want to say you were a pleasure. Do you remember that we had some moments?
We did have some moments.
We had some moments. But when we had those moments, do you remember me saying that you remind me of my daughter?
Yes, you always used to tell me that.
So I always saw you that way, as my daughter, or as, you know what I'm saying? And I loved you guys. I really did love my students, and I felt that my responsibility was to, first of all, give my best to each and every one of you, and to prepare you for outside of this thing called school.
Exactly.
And that is what, I guess, that was my drive. That's what drove me every day. And I loved reading and I loved English, and my goal was to share it. And I saw your love very early.
Thank you.
Very early.
Thank
you.
you.
Let me know. And you talked about everything else too.
Right.
So yeah, it was good. It was good though.
I've been opinionated for a long time. But I remember like the first week in your class, and I remember you reading Frederick Douglass' speech about agitate, and I remember everybody was like, because you were so passionate, you was like, agitate, agitate, agitate. Everybody was like, okay, like, here we go. This is exactly what they said it was. But I mean, you only get a couple of teachers like that are truly gems, and that see your passion and they like speak into that, and I felt like you always did that. Sometimes I used to feel like you was really hard on me when it came to like my papers and stuff. You would be like, you can write better than that. And I used to be like
Well, sometimes when you see things in people, right? You push them more.
You push them. So Mrs. Anderson brought her favorite book today, and I'm so excited to talk about it. So tell us about your favorite book.
Well, my favorite book is Their Eyes Were Watching God. That's Zora Hurston. And it's funny because I think I was introduced to Zora Hurston in college. It's funny because in high school,
you didn't read it at all?
No.
Do you remember reading any Black authors in high school?
I don't. Okay. And so then I went to North Carolina Central, and that is where I began to learn that we actually wrote.
Mm-hmm.
I think I may have been introduced to Langston Houston High School, maybe, but I just don't remember any. So in college, Zora Neale Hurston, I heard about her, but then I was asked to teach something in probably 93, 94, teach a pace setter course. And Their Eyes Were Watching God was part of that. And so I taught it and fell in love.
Oh, okay.
With the language. I love language.
Me too. I love syntax and how things are put together.
And the lyrical nature of language.
Yes.
So her language was just beautiful. Then, so you have beautiful language beside dialect. So that was just, that I understood because I grew up with people who spoke this way.
Right.
And then you had this journey, the protagonist journey on a journey. And I've always loved teaching about, reading about the journey. Because I've always seen my life that way. So all of that in one book was like, I love it. So I fell in love.
How many times have you read it?
I don't know.
Multiple.
A lot. Because I've taught it, and every time I teach it, or taught it, I don't teach anymore, but every time I taught it, I read it again.
Right.
And then I read it again this week.
Right.
And this time was probably the best time.
Wow, that's so good. I've read some books multiple times, and like I told people, I was introduced to Song of Solomon at the at the age of 17 by you. But reading it at 17 and then reading it at 24 and then reading it at I think the last time I read it, and I still pick it up from time to time and just read certain pieces from it because especially as I got older and I got into my spiritual journey, I saw how parallel Toni Morrison writing was to scripture.
Gotcha.
And I found beauty in that. So like the last time that I fully read through that book at the age of 30, it just really brought me to tears. Like I feel like once I got into my 30s, I became emotional from a different space. Like in my 20s, I was emotional from experience. But in my 30s, I'm more so emotional out of gratitude. And it's a journey. It's very beautiful. And I think it's amazing as when we reread stories and we read them over again. And if I'm not mistaken, I think you also introduced us to Kate Chopin that year, The Awakening.
The Awakening.
Yes, and that's also one of my favorite stories. And so when I just think about women and those different journeys, and maybe Susan Plath too. I forgot the yellow wallpaper or what. Yeah. So when I think about those and those journeys, I'm like, man, like it's amazing. They mean so much more now at 32 than they did when I was 17.
And when you're 50,
it'll be different.
It's gonna be different. So I read this week at 50.
You couldn't take it.
And it's a totally different experience. I was like, because I relate to her on a different, totally different level than I did when I taught it the first time and read it the first time, I was in my 20s. So yeah, I'm a totally different person, and so I approach this from a different perspective.
What is your favorite thing about Jamie?
Jenny's strong.
She is.
And I think her strength, but also she never gave up on, even though she lived with Logan, Granny made a choice for her. Right. Logan wanted to make choices for her. Jody made choices for her. She never gave up on what she really wanted. And I think that's what I see. I see that in myself. And that's my favorite thing about you.
That's your favorite thing about her. So let's give the people, if you have not read Their Eyes Are Watching God by the Zora Neale Hurston, let's give you a summary about this beautiful book before we begin to unpack some great things that are in these pages. Ooh, I just love a good book. I do. I love a good book. I read it, and the same way people sit down in front of TVs and they watch movies, that's how I see books in my head. I always tell people that books are the first way I travel, and I remember reading this, and I remember seeing and smelling and just touching everything that she touched in the book. So let's give the people a summary about The Eyes Watching Us.
A summary. So we have our protagonist, our main character, Janie. And it really is about, well, I'll give a brief little thing here. It's really about Janie's journey from childhood to adulthood. Yeah.
From childhood to adulthood.
That really is it. But it includes, I don't know. To me, this is a hard book to summarize without telling the story.
We're going to tell the story, but I just wanted to tell them it's definitely about the journey of a woman, and it's her journey through love. It's her journey through self-discovery. It's about her journey with just relationships, period, on different levels, like relationships with family members and friendships. And your relationship with the community, and also about the people you just encounter on a day-to-day basis, and how she navigated that during a time where being strong and being, and wanting differently than people wanted from you was frowned upon, and you was just supposed to go the way they wanted you to go, and she fought that the whole story.
And I think ultimately it's about her relationship with herself.
It is, definitely. That's a great way to sum it up. So what are some of your favorite moments in Their Eyes Are Watching God?
Okay. So one of my first favorites. May I turn to it?
Yes, you can turn to it. And we're going to make sure so they can hear us on the thing.
Sorry. I'm a soft-spoken
yes, she's soft-spoken
person. But I think my first favorite moment is chapter 2. Is really the chapter to me that establishes the fact that Janie lacks roots and kind of lacks identity. But it's also in chapter 2 where we see Nanny's, that's her grandmother, Nanny's plan for Janie that really goes against everything that she dreams of and wants to be. But so that's chapter 2. But one of my favorite scenes in chapter 2, and I put my little tabs at the top for this. So this is where Janie is kind of coming into her own. She's a teenager. Nanny caught her kissing, so now Nanny is like, hey.
Right, you want to kiss?
If you want to kiss, we can't have this, so on. But Nanny says, and I might not read it in dialect, I might just read it the way I read it, but she says, honey, the white man is the rule of everything as far as I've been able to find out. Maybe it's someplace way off in the ocean where the black man is in power. But we don't know nothing but what we see. So the white man throw down the load and tell the nigger man to pick it up. He pick it up because he have to, but he don't tote it. He hand it to his women folks. The nigger woman is the mule of the world as far as I can see. I've been praying for it to be different with you long. And so that one line for me, that, and I always say the black woman is the mule of the world.
The mule of the world.
Has always been, I can be in a conversation with my sister and we'll be talking about something and I say, you know what they say, you know what Nanny said.
Yeah.
And why is that my favorite? I think because it's true.
It's true. It is very true.
When you think of a mule, you think of a beast of burden. And I think in a sense we have been, but what I think the beauty of it is that even though we are, we still rise. We still, and Janie did. Because that's what Janie kind of becomes to everybody in her life. But she still comes out.
Still comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I definitely agree with that. That the black woman is the mule of the world. But the greatest thing about the black woman is not only do we still rise, but because we're the mule, we carry the seed, we carry the generational curses. You know, we carry all those things and we nurture them and then we birth them. But like we birth those things, we can birth new things. Yes. So there's always, like you said, it's so heavy, and I think that we really miss the importance of Nanny and her messages in that book, because she dropped them all the time. So she was and that's one thing that I learned when I reread books. Sometimes I focus on different characters. Like you're on Jamie because she is the protagonist, she is the main character. But then you go back and you look at Nanny, and then you go back and you look at her first husband, and then you go back and you look at TK. You know, so you go back and you read the story, but you look at it from the perspective of these other people, and you begin to see it differently, and that's where you get all of the lessons. Like you get them from Jane, but you get a lot from other people too.
You get a lot from other people.
So I really love it. And so, what do you think? What made you the happiest in this story? What parts made you the happiest?
I think when Janie finally spoke up to Jody. I mean, he had gotten to the point where she had to cover her head. She couldn't do anything.
Right.
Couldn't speak, and she finally found her voice. Or started finding her voice. And so for me, it was like, okay, so this girl has been through some things, and now she is finding her voice. Interesting thing. So for me, it's a lot of connections, especially now. That made me the happiest because I know what that is. Right. I'm living that now. Been married 20 years, great husband, but I realized we met when I was 29, married when I was 30, and there are things now that I'm saying, not bad things. But it's funny how as you grow in something and you've been through things, you find your voice. And you go, oh, I realize now I've been kind of suppressing that. And I feel like Janie she didn't suppress her voice. It was, but she found her voice. And started saying what she needed to say, despite what the consequences would be. So that made me happy.
And what do you think it is that women find that makes them break through their oppression? Because she was oppressed.
Very much so.
And I think a lot of women are. And it doesn't always look the same, the oppression. I think that when we think of it, we always think of it in like a violent manner, but it's not always that way. So what do you think it was that made her start to, break out of that oppression?
I think some of it is age, experience, and you just get tired.
Right. Yeah, you do. When you're tired, you're tired.
And I don't know if I can find it, but I'll try to find it. But you just get to a point where you realize or you recognize. Okay, I've been doing this too long.
Right.
This has been happening this way too long.
Right. It's becoming insane.
And I don't like the way I feel in this. And so I think age, experience, time make you, and I think that's what happened with Jamie. It's like she looked at this man and said, this man keeps putting me down in front of other people. I don't have to do that anymore.
And he wanted to oppress her beauty.
Yeah.
He wanted cover her hair, and everybody always talked about her hair, and it's like you want to cover up the things that make people recognize her. And it's like you kind of have to find your voice, because how else will people see me?
May I ask you a question? Do you think, okay, so Jody, for example, always talked about, it was I God, which to me has this other meaning, right? But he was this big man in town, and so you're to suppress this beauty. Was that a result of his insecurity?
It was definitely a result of his insecurity, and that was because he wanted something that he knew had value, but he didn't want her to know her full worth. Because once she realized that what she did, she was no longer going to be with him because she realized that he was unworthy because of his own insecurities and what he wanted to be. And it was more so of a struggle of ego. It was, and you know, and I feel like people, when they have an ego, they eat up space.
Yes.
And when you eat up space, you can't create. You can't allow things to become.
Right.
And that's what he did to her.
Yes.
That's what he did to her. And so she had to create space. So if I can't have space in this house that we are in together, I'm going to step outside of this house and I'm going to find space to be who I am.
And that may have been his fear.
That was his
or
fear.
anyone's fear when
Mhm.
they.
Yeah.
That's why I do what I do to you.
Yeah,
That's why
that's
I beat you
suppressive.
down
Mhm.
because when you do find out who you are, you're not gonna be here
Yeah.
with me.
This is you're
Yeah.
going to figure out that you're bigger than this. So, but he didn't realize that if he allowed her to be who she was and he wanted to learn that he would have got to experience that greater with her.
Right.
And that's what people miss.
Yes.
They don't
make
want
him greater.
Yeah, and it would have made him great. They want to be great on their own path, but then they want to be joined to someone. So how can we be joined together when you just want to walk a path by yourself? Where it is, you have your path, I have my path, and we have a path together, but it all has to have a meeting place. And he didn't believe in that.
Not at all.
Yeah. And it's crazy because you can look at Janie. I've looked at women that I know, and I've seen Janie in them. And you can look at Janie and you could say she's flawed, and you could say sometimes you could say she's fast, sometimes you could say she's hard-headed, sometimes you could say she's many things, but what you don't understand is everybody has a journey, and sometimes it takes those experiences for you to become, you know, your greater. And so when I read about Janie, and like probably about the third time, and I had learned the term respectability politics, I stopped judging her when reading the book. And
so you judged her before?
I did judge her when I first read. I was like, Janie is wild. Like, you know, because I was like, okay, I was like, her grandma called her kissing. Okay, I see that. Then I'm like, then she with Jody, then she's doing all this, and then she married, and then she leaving. Then she meet this man, now she with TK, and they shacking. And it was before I had, but that was because of how I was raised. So I had a sheltered perspective, and so I thought of her a certain way.
Okay.
But that's why I said once I read it again and I was older and I, you know, started finding out about these terms and stuff, I realized that how I was seeing her, it wasn't that she was a bad person. It wasn't that she was this unclean woman. It was circumstance. And it was experience.
And she was seeking connection.
Right.
She, again, in chapter 2, I think that kind of establishes it for us, that she is really rootless.
Rootless.
Doesn't know her father. Doesn't know her mother. Is growing up in the backyard of a white family's house. There's the scene where she sees a picture and says, "Who? That's me." She didn't know she was black until that picture was taken, because she played with all of the white children.
Right.
They called her alphabet, which I thought was interesting. So there's this point. So during that time, I'm not called by my name.
Right.
I don't realize I'm black.
Right.
She's rootless.
Right.
She lacks a
Identity.
foundation and identity.
Identity, yeah.
Okay, and so then Nanny makes a decision for her to marry this old Logan killer who clearly is not attractive, right? But he has what Nanny thinks Janie needs.
Security.
She thinks that security is good. But again, you can have security, but you still lack a true foundation.
Right.
So to me, it's like, in everything, so she did it because she had to.
Right.
But there was no connection. There was no love. There was no feeling. There was none of that. She leaves with this other man. Sure, people, you know, our old folks won't call her floozy or whatever they call Hussy.
Yeah,
Those are the old
the old terms. Or she loose.
strumpet.
Loose.
You know, they had all these names. But to me, I always looked at her as a person who had reason.
Mm-hmm.
She's looking for a connection. Again, let me talk about how I identify with Janie.
Right.
My mother was ill when I was growing up, age 12 to 19. She died when I was 19. I recognized that a lot of the choices I made was seeking connection. I mean, I had my dad, had my sisters, but they all kind of had, my dad got married again, my sisters were married, and I was always seeking connection. So to me, this book, her journey really is about finding who she is and getting some roots.
Right.
You know, and those men, Logan and then Jody, didn't allow for that.
No, they didn't.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And don't you think it's so crazy when she found what she wanted, like just how tragic it is.
Yeah.
It's like
the story of life.
Yeah, it's the story of life. Like it's just, you know, I just feel like it's just, and then just the disease itself is tragic. Like you know, just the whole
ugly.
Yeah, it's just but you know, like you said, it's definitely the story of life. But then also when you read that, you're like, oh my goodness, is there no happy ending? And is it gonna take me too long to find what I am? Like, am I, you know, I start off as this smooth stone, and then it's like I get thrown and I get nicked and I get scratched and I get, you know, and so it's like I'm not as polished as I was, and then I find this happiness, and it's like because I'm not as polished as I was, like it's just like collateral damage.
But there's a greater beauty.
It is.
In the stone. Okay, so the smooth stone is pretty. But that's all there is.
Yeah,
it's smooth. It's just a smooth stone. Okay, that's cute. You can look at it for a while. You can set it down. But the stone with the nicks and the jagged edges and the holes and the crevices, you're looking for the beauty.
Right.
Right. You're gonna look at that a little bit longer.
Right.
Because there's more to look at. I guess when I think about Janie and the tragedy.
That's what I'm saying, so tragic.
Found this love, and then but if you look at her when she returns, I think she has a strength that she didn't possess before.
Yes.
I think she is grounded.
Yeah, she
right?
is.
In a way that she never was before. So even in those tragedies, I think the tragedies create something in us that nothing else can create in us. I could not appreciate that until this point in my life.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. That's why reading this book, I look at it from a very different perspective.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what life does.
I think, you know, in a while it'll be time to read it again. You know, I think it'll be time to read it again. It's when I started doing my book bundles, and probably the first 10 to 15 that I sent out, I put The Eyes Were Watching God in every bundle.
Oh, did you?
I put it in every bundle. I put that one, The Secret Life of Bees, and Eat, Pray, Love in every bundle, because my first 15 bundles, they were for women. And they all had, you know, a common need in the answers to their questions, which helps me curate the bundle.
Okay.
And it seemed like everybody, either they had a connection and they lost it, or they were seeking a connection, or they were in a connection but they were feeling burnt out, or they were feeling burdened. And I wanted to, you know, remind them and show them all these stories of where people were triumphant in one way or another. And so I think, you know, I think there's like 5 books that women should always read, and Their Eyes Were Watching God is definitely one of them. And you know, and I'm happy because they are putting these books in the curriculum now.
Yes.
Like in high school curriculum now. So there's a lot of, you know, and they're not waiting until you're like in 12th grade now, because, you know, I had to wait until I was in 12th grade to read these good old Black authors. But now they're doing it as early as ninth grade. You'll
Yes.
see these books on there, you know. So and it's a very easy read. I feel like you can read it in 8th grade. You know,
really is.
Yeah, it's a very easy. It's a weekend. Like, you know, sometimes I do a weekend reading. That and what is it? Breathe Eyes Memory. I think those are both like really good weekend reads where you just get you a good little message and you come back on Monday feeling a lot better about yourself and what's to move forward. Yeah. So, what else do you want to tell us about this story?
Well, I got my glasses. Sorry. And so I'm not going to be able to read it until I get those glasses. Oh, that's the other thing that happens as you get older. You see messages and you can't see. But anyway, the language. I don't think to me, you cannot forget how beautiful her writing is. And I mean outside of the dialect. It's like, so you've got this great, you know, but you got this great, just the way she explains things. Like she says, after she says what she says to Jody and kind of breaks him down, basically, and she sees him for who he really is. She said something fell off the shelf inside of her, and it was the image of Jody.
Wow.
And, you know, so that to me, it's just the way Zora Neale Hurston just explains the most common emotion, the most common feeling. It's just put so beautifully.
Right,
to
it
me.
is. It is.
So that was just one
that
of those.
imagery.
The imagery is, and you see it. So where you might feel it when you hear that something fell off the shelf inside.
Oh yeah, I seen a picture tumble.
You see it,
right?
But you also feel it because it has happened to you.
Right.
Your image of someone, your relationship with someone, something inside you broke.
Yes.
It fell off that shelf. I had you here. I saw this situation or this person here, and now it fell. It's not the same. So to me, she's beautiful. But anyway,
yes.
The very first page, I think sometimes we read it and we just kind of gloss over it, but don't connect it to this book. But I think it's extremely important. And well, may I read it?
Yes, read it.
So the first 2 paragraphs to me just set the tone, but I think you have to revisit them before you sit this book, back on the shelf. So the first 2 paragraphs says, ships at a distance have every man's wish on board. For some they come in with the tide. For others they sail forever on the horizon, never out of sight, never landing until the watcher turns his eyes away in resignation, his dreams mocked to death by time. That is the life of men. Now women forget all those things they don't want to remember and remember everything they don't want to forget. The dream is the truth. Then they act and do things accordingly. And then it moves into the story. But
right.
Yeah.
What a beautiful preamble.
Isn't it?
What is it?
I mean, yeah. And so it's like, yeah. That's all you can
That's
say.
exactly. It's like she summed her book up herself. And then she was like, but, and if that's not enough for you, like in short, but here is the story behind it, so that you can see what I'm talking about. I think that, like I said, Octavia, Tony, Zora, they write so beautifully. Prose, language, just imagery, symbolism, just they can make a sentence so heavy.
Yes. But
they can also make a sentence so light. So it's just, and that's a true gift.
It is.
And that's, it's something that I'm constantly practicing, even in my own writing. And people when they write, I would need to look into this, but I need to know what made them decide to write, like the fiction. And I decided to write fiction, and I particularly I write young adult fiction. Because I feel like that's where you can catch it. you know, like Tony has some great stories, and there are some that you can read it and you can get the story, but then you read it. Like I remember trying to read Paradise Lost and being like, like, you know, and being like, I cannot. And then I remember reading others and then going back and reading it again and feel like, oh, now I understand. It's kind of like you got to work your way into her stories. And then even with Zora Neale Hurston, reading Their Eyes Were Watching God, and then reading the latest, you know, Better Con, about the last slave, and just, and it's beauty in reading their things and even seeing their growth in their writing. Right. And you're like, how could she get any better than she already was? And then think, if they write that well, how many things have they written that they didn't even put out there? Yeah, that we never saw, that they didn't think were good enough. So I think that that's amazing. And so one more thing about this book, if you could, because I got to do this with Sister Soldier, if you could have sat down and talked to Zora, what is one thing that you would have told her about Their Eyes Were Watching God?
Zora. I feel like this book, I'd probably tell her it changed me. And that this book showed me what women like me can do. Both because she wrote it and because of what Janie was, who she was. Kind of showed me, okay, so black women are strong. Okay, we can do this. I can do this. So yeah, your book changed me.
Oh, that would be beautiful. And I'm pretty, you know, and she'll probably say it changed me too. I'm pretty sure it did, to write so much about somebody and really write a story about a person that you created. And it's crazy that someone that you created has the ability to change people.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it's definitely amazing. Well, do you have anything else that you want to let us know today about what have you read? I know you reread this. What did you read before this? What have you been reading?
Well, my last two books I actually listened to.
Okay.
Interesting.
I do audiobooks sometimes, usually when I'm writing.
Just because I've been in the car a lot. So it's like, you know, I just love listening to a story. And those are really light. So nothing deep, just some light. I like thrillers. So come
do you?
I can't even tell you the names of them, honestly. But I am in the middle of, and it's very dense, Hitler's Willing Executioners.
Wow.
So yeah, that's where I am right now, trying to get through that.
Right, okay. I'm reading, and it's actually over there on the table, London. He is probably falling asleep,
Okay.
but let me grab it. And he whenever I'm talking long like this, he'll fall asleep. Okay. It almost makes me feel like my voice is melodic to him, but I don't know. So I am actually rereading Children of Blood and Bone. And it's really good. It's really, really good. And I have a book that I'm writing that this kind of is helping me to get through that book, because I wrote like a couple chapters of it and I stopped, and then I read this and I was like, I can do this. So it's really good. It's about these tribes and their magical people, and their magic has been suppressed by the people who are not magical, and it's just a lot. And a lot of people try to compare. They're like, oh, it's like our Black Harry Potter, but no, it's bigger than that. It's different. Yeah, it's a lot of the person who wrote, she's a Nigerian writer, and she's young, and she wrote this book, and she releases the second book in February, and they've already adapted this to a movie, and she was only like 24 when she wrote this. And I was like, that's amazing. So I'm reading The Children of Blood and Bone. I'm rereading now. This is my second time around. And then I'm reading Queenie by Candace Carter Williams. And Queenie is also, she's Afro-British. and it's very funny, and she works at she's an editor at a newspaper, and it's just a light, like, funny story, but it's about coming of age, and these different things that's going on, and she's in an interracial relationship, and it's very interesting. So I'm reading that right now, and I'm always in the middle of a whole bunch of books. So I have a lot of books where I just have bookmarks all throughout them, and when I'm going on a road trip, or if I'm gonna be somewhere with somebody for a little while, or if I'm riding in the car with somebody, I'll just pick one of them up and throw them in my bag. And it's so funny, I gave Mrs. Anderson a book a couple of years ago, and she brought it here to me today. She was like, "This is your book. I saw you, and you linked it to me." I'm like, that's so crazy. But thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming and speaking with us today on Books and Brews. We didn't have any brew. I didn't want to offer Mrs. Anderson any alcohol. But on this show, I usually will have a brew of the day as we are sharing the book. But I'm so excited that she was here, and I'm so excited that she was able to talk with us, and I'm just so elated to share this show with you guys and just have this platform where we talk about the beauty in books and literature. And Zora Neale Hurston, we love you, and thank you for all that you do. So I'm so glad you came.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Next time on Books and Brews, you guys. Enjoy. And we'll stop this because we'll be editing it.